Lived experiences is bringing a new social innovation program into the community. Something that's really unheard of, that we really need in our community. I started this program because of my own experience in life. And I wasn't educated. I was very disconnected from my own family, from my own community, and even from the whole system itself, Oceanside itself. The whole idea is to bring as much wonderful people together, to really have a support system for not only our youth, but also our homeless people, or just the working families itself. I'm on a mission to educate, to heal, and to support our communities. The more we smile, the better we live.
Events like this are highly of importance. I mean, it brings awareness to people that don't have this information or not really aware of what's happening out there. It brings people together from all aspects and really have that conversation, a real raw conversation, a human conversation, and how do we come together as a team, as a city, as a community.
I'm sitting with our first group of speakers, and I'm thinking to myself that as we are collectively wayfinding, they give us a very unique perspective to think about. Our next group of speakers will do the same. They'll introduce themselves and tell their stories, and they're talking a little bit differently. I want you to think about this as they speak. Systems are designed to get the results they get. There are no dysfunctional systems. So when we talk about what we are getting and what people are experiencing on the other side, we have to ask ourselves what systems do need to be interrogated, what we do need to transform, dismantle, and rebuild. So without further ado, our next group of speakers.
My name is Daniel Cruz. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. It's a pleasure to meet you and you. I want to thank all of you for being here. I'm 18 years of age. I'm the eldest out of 5 children, and I've been working with Oscar. Where is he at? He's around here somewhere. I've been working with Oscar since he had this dream and put it into action like 4.5 years ago. And so it's a great pleasure to be here with each and every one of you. And I go by Daniel, by Danny. My middle name is David Ricardo Cruz. So if you guys forget any of those, you guys have a long list of names you guys can call me by. I'll respond to any of them. And so it's a pleasure. It was a pleasure to work with Oscar, especially when he first called me to embark on this lifelong journey, this mission to really focus on the issues that should really have the focus and the emphasis on. And so I love this because I believe, to me, it tells me that before we can fix the problems that we have in our community, why don't we first fix the problems that we have within each other, individually? What my problems are, what my needs are, what yours are. Mental health is important because, like the speakers that were before us were saying, we are connected within it, you know? And so I want to tell a little story. I hopefully should have enough time. So I want you guys to close your eyes and go on this journey with me. Imagine this. You are on a ship. You hear raging waves and you see a storm coming towards you. And it's just there. Feels like you have no other solution to survive this one. All of a sudden, the ship wrecks and you fall into the waters. The engulfing waters threaten you. The deep surrounds you. Seaweed wraps around your head, and you sink in. You sink down, and the earth beneath you bars you in what could be forever. Now, I want to invite you to open up your eyes slowly, if you are ready to. And I want to tell you that from personal experience, this is what a great amount of time I felt in my life really defined and you could say articulated how I felt. I grew up here in Oceanside. Sorry, I just had to throw that in there. But I grew up here in Oceanside in a very conservative home, and I'm not talking about politically conservative. It was faith-based as well. I am Christian. I am the eldest out of 5 children in a family of 7. My dad is a clergyman, and for those that don't know, at times it can be difficult to be the son of a clergyman, because you're either one out of 2 sides. You're either the best and the good, you embark everything that family member is, or you're the total opposite. You have standards to meet. You have requirements that you must fulfill. Not just that, as the eldest out of 5 children, there's a 5 to 7 year gap between me and the brother after me. And I have to take on the responsibility of being a role model to them. Now, at times we grew up, for a bunch of my, how do I say this in a polite manner? for our friends and family that have lived much longer and, with wisdom, you guys have a crown of glory on your head and honor and wisdom. So I pay attention to a lot of you guys, but my bad. But a lot of older folks grew up, with this being a constant reality in their lives of just expectations and realities, requirements that we must meet and take. But for our new generations, such as myself, I consider myself, and the ones before me and after me a years more, this is different for us. We grow up in a society where we are conditioned to be one way, to think one way, and we're not allowed freedom to think of our own. Growing up in a very conservative household and a faith-based house, I wanted to be the best for my father, for my family. I wanted my other people to say, you did a well job. That at the end of my deathbed, all I can hear is, well done. Look back. I don't want to just accomplish my dreams. If today was my last moment, I only wish that I was that person that someone can come up to me and say, because of you, I'm better. And mental health speaks greatly to me because that's where it begins. I love the sign of love because I feel like the strongest weapon that mental health has is love. Mental health and love can be words with different definitions for a lot of people. To me, love is not a feeling. It's an act of self-deniance for another. Because love is what you do in spite of what you feel. And so I want to give one last story. I know this kid who did everything his parents told him to. He did everything it took to be the best that he could. He grew up to be very independent because of who his parents were. Having him at a young age, they had to drop him off with his grandmother. And his parents struggled at some point. They were homeless, and thank God they were able to get back up on their feet. But in spite of those challenges and more, he still did his best. But in his mind, it was never enough. And he grew older, still holding true to those values, those requirements, expectations, meeting all of it. Until one day, it almost vanished. In this kid's junior year in high school, he decided that he was going to work. A lot of, for those that have children or siblings, virtual learning was a thing for a couple of years. And he decided, you know what? His father would tell him, that if you want something, you have to work for it. And so he said, I want to have a car, go around, go places. And so he's like, I'm going to work for it. He got not one job, he got 2 jobs and did virtual learning. He would wake up at 5, go in at 6. The job was lenient enough to let him do his schoolwork in the break room. So he would go around 7:30, come back out. When he was done, finish the hours that he needed. And after that was done, if the other job, had some sort of event or something, he would go in and do it. And he was like that for over a year, until one day he had an accident at work. He worked at a woodworking company, and as he was pushing a cart full of side panels, wooden side panels, apparently someone didn't adjust the handles correctly. And he was about to push it just a couple of inches, not even a lot. He knew he couldn't move it. And the bars slipped off. 500 to 600 pounds of weight fell mainly on his head. And there was a spew of blood all over the place. And at that moment, he says he can't remember anything. Like that. He woke up, he tells me he woke up in the hospital, couldn't remember anything, didn't think about anything else, but what has he fulfilled in his life? And he tells me, when he came to, the nurses and the doctors were asking him questions and he wouldn't answer. He didn't know. And so when he came to, all he did was sing a song. He sung a song in Spanish, and the nurses were amazed. They asked him, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm singing a song." "What are you singing?" And his mind wasn't all there, so he said, "I'm singing a song." And then they asked him, "What does the song say?" And he replied, "It's a message of peace." And for those that grew up, possibly in a Christian home, it's an old hymn that says, "Peace, peace, wonderful peace." And it tore him apart. But he was happy because the accident made him open up his eyes to what really was important. It was no longer coming out of the hospital, it was no longer about the labels, what he was taught to do or to say to the right people or to not know. It was first others. There's a quote that says that pain, I'm not sure if I'm getting this correctly, but we feel pain in order to empathize with other people. It's a great tool. Now, what does that have to do with mental health, much less, our community? Well, what was hardest most on this kid was to see his parents breaking down in front of him. His father, being big and strong, his hero, his mother next to him. He had 3 days of nonstop nurses and doctors coming in and telling him, "You probably can't make it." But he proved them wrong. He got up enough to tell his story to me. And he's been told that he has such a great perspective. He handled this greatly. Instead of it becoming a barrier for him, he used it to empower himself. Now, he has trouble with seeing, he has blurred visions at times, he's partially deaf from one ear. Coming out of the hospital, he couldn't walk much, he had to use a cane. But a lot of people see him so strong-willed. So, they're humbled, but they ask him, "How did you do it?" at an instant, almost everything was taken away from you. It didn't matter what he did in the past, how much of the standards he had acquired or was potential enough to achieve. It was no longer anything that other people said about him, and they asked him, how did you go through it? Well, let me tell you that he didn't do it by himself. He's doing okay, and I know that for a fact because I am that kid. And people ask me, how is it that you're still up here? You have an excuse to drop it all. You know, you have an excuse to not be the child your father wants you to be. You have an excuse to complain and not take care of yourself. But going through something, and especially within the youth in our community that also have gone through other things, you know, I say that there's a situation is neither good or bad based on what the conditions are, but rather the result of what that is. I could have given it all up and say, no, I'm done. And at times, truthfully, I almost did. But I used it to my advantage. And when I applied for scholarship for college, I told them I don't share this for leniency, for pity, for nothing, but to merely show the fact that, you know, how I cope with one of the greatest life changers, you know, to empower myself, to be better for myself. And going through something like that, you know, it's made me more aware of other people. I spent countless nights after my accident being able to go home crying midnight where no one could hear me. Praying to God. Not asking him questions because I knew the answers to those, but simply being there alone by myself. So when people ask me, how did you do it? You know, I had a lot of things. I surrounded myself with one of the best people. I had an amazing family that loved me, was there for me. I used my faith and action to believe that this was for my good. I said all the right words and sang all the right songs, not because it was required of me, not because it was expected of me, but because it was all I had. That was me, you know? So I've had the opportunity to meet different people, different youth with Oscar, working with him, and we all share something in common together. We talk about pain and trauma, and at times we might seem as though pain is the problem, but it's not. I love this quote in terms of mental pain by C.S. Lewis, one of my favorite writers. He says that, I'm going to paraphrase here because I can't remember the whole thing, but he basically says mental pain is less traumatic than physical pain, but it's more common and more hard to bear. He says, because it's easier to say, I have, or my tooth is aching, than to say my heart is broken. But one of the amazing things that I have learned is that whatever is broken, that's not the end of it. You can decide what the broken pieces will become. That's why I love art. I'm a musician, but I love art, you know, because out of something that's broken, we have beautiful art pieces. And working with Oscar and with this, incident that happened to me, I've come to learn how much important it is for us to be mentally healthy. Because I grew up in an old, traditional Hispanic home where toughen up, you're a man, And I can only speak for what has happened to me and what I lived. So when I'm talking about the changes that we need in our community, when I'm talking about personal experiences, I talk about the Hispanic community more because that's what I grew up in. That's what I grew up listening to. But I was told you're a man. One time, I forgot who was, my grandfather. I'm like, oh, abuelo, I didn't call him grandpa, I would call him grampis. Something was hurting, I was limping to him. In Spanish, or in English, I think he's like, oh really, are you okay? You should try some acting. I'm like, acting? He was like, acting like a real man. So I was like, and honestly, at that moment, I'm like, shoot, okay, that was not what I wanted to hear from you, but. But the thing is this, we are all here for many reasons, but I think it's all for one purpose, And what we are doing here doesn't just embark all those that are here. It doesn't embark those that are up in penthouses, or those living in the back alley, those walking their dog, or those in search of food. Not just them. All of us, our world. And at times we can seem kind of crazy talking about these things, expressing our ideas and our emotions or feelings. I love what Josh said about John the Baptist. He was a prophet of God, but no one really, they thought him for crazy. He didn't wear the regular clothes that they had. He ate wild honey and locusts, and he came proclaiming a message that wasn't heard of for 400 years. Something new, something brilliant, so much that it stirred up something else, a commotion. So when the scribes and Pharisees, people who knew God's word, came up to him and asked him, are you the one? He said, no. And I think, I'm not sure which speaker said, but it's important to know, I think it was Josh as well, that said, it's important to know who I am as. Who am I? And he said, no, I'm not the one. And so, as crazy as sometimes we may seem, or sound, or be, I think right here is important. And I can talk for the youth in our community, because at one point I was there with them. And I'm able to sympathize with them. Mental health is not a destination. It's not from point A to point B. Mental health is the process from here. And no, not here. From here to when God decides to take me. And so I encourage each and one of you to take something from here. Because what we are doing is not just a dream of Oscar's. I can tell you for a fact it's not just a dream. It's not just a goal for us. For others, it's a hope. For others, it's a dream. Others, a necessity. And I think we've hushed down the importance of mental health way too much. So much so that I didn't start understanding the importance of mental health until I had that accident. I had to recover from it mentally before I can recover from it physically. I had my reason of why before I could see how get there. And so I feel as though I feel very thankful because the change starts here. If people ask you about how do we start a revolution or reformation, we come up with these big, elaborate schemes and ideas and goals. When in reality, do you really want to know where it starts? It starts with you standing up, getting a big marker, drawing a circle around yourself, and reminding yourself that it starts in there. We need to be emotionally, mentally, physically well. And if we're not, that's okay. Because we are in this journey with other people who are struggling in some way, shape, form, or manner as we are. And what I feel really connects us is our need for mental health, our need for love. I encourage you to take something from here back home and share it. There are many ways to support this dream. It's not just about donating or talking or doing something, but reflecting that in your home. And how does that relate to public safety? Once we can deal with our personal problems, maybe not achieve an answer for it, but learn how to cope with it. Once we learn how to cope with deep within, we can cope with our community because it's an essential. And so, thank you.
Buenas tardes.
Hey, y'all, oh, sound is good, all right. Man, that's tough, so I gotta follow Daniel, right? I'm gonna do my best, So thank you, I'm not from Oceanside, for those of you wondering or keeping tabs. I'm from a little town called San Diego, just 45 minutes south from here, right? Born and raised here in San Diego. First and foremost, I'd like to start out by thanking Oscarin and all the planning committee and Tony for putting together this opportunity. Really, that's what it is, this opportunity for us to come together and dialogue about something so important to all of us. My name is Dr. Beto Vasquez. I'm a biologist by background, but I consider myself a multidisciplinary scientist in all the realms of different type of work that I do. I guess I start off by just kind of telling you a little bit about myself and my growing up. I had a very normal upbringing, right? I grew up in a household. There was abusive alcoholism, there was dysfunction, there was domestic violence, and then my neighborhood was really normal too. There was a lot of violence and drugs and gangs. And it's interesting because most of the time folks, they chuckle a little bit when I tell them about this normal growing up that I had because they think, hey, that's not so normal, right? But get into the essence of why we're here today, right? We need to really touch base and understand that the normality that we all come with is very different. Very different. It doesn't matter if you grew up in a community like the one I described, or if you grew up in a community that was well off with, maybe a view of the ocean, with resources that were never limited, but perhaps maybe the parental guidance wasn't there, maybe the support emotionally or physically wasn't there for you. It can look like many different things. And so naturally for me, because I also was a product of one of those households where parents were always working and I didn't get to spend a lot of time, or I didn't get to have my parents show up when I was recognized for a certificate, or those, most improved, the chavalito that dressed nice, el bien peinado, right? Like all those little certificates, you didn't miss class, right? And I see everybody's parents come in and check them out. And I always waited, right? She would never show up. And I mentioned that because years later, right, like you can still know that it tugs on some heartstrings, right? And so you can imagine if something so small, right, something so insignificant, as many would call it, can still have that ramification today. right? You can only imagine how many other things are there that are unsettled, that have, for a better way of understanding it, we've kind of tucked it away. We've tucked it away because it's better not to deal with it, right? And we grew up in these cultures and in these subcultures where we don't air our dirty laundry, right? We don't tell people how we feel. And even as a society, we pass by someone and we ask, how are you doing? And we keep walking because we really don't care, right? And the natural response to that for us, we've been programmed, we've been conditioned to say, oh, I'm good, I'm fine, right? Recognizing that inside, we're just a hot mess. We're just a hot mess. And you know what? I want to normalize that for you. I want to normalize that for you because chances are that today you had to overcome many different hurdles to be here, many different feelings. Should I go? Should I not go? I could do these other things. There's this thing that's happening. It's called life, right? Got to get the kids around, got to deal with domestic situations, got to do this. And Lord knows that my car doesn't run on friendship, right? My car doesn't run on friendship. And I was sharing that with somebody earlier, right? Because, listen, look, we got here and my son read this. My son, Daniel's right there. Hi, Daniel. You awake? All right, buddy. Thank you. So we read, love fixes all. And he said, but does it really? Yes, does it really? And I was like, yeah, mijo, of course. If love, orale, love, everything's good, right? And I thought about it, then I'm processing it, and I'm thinking, that's a start. That's a good start. We're hearing a lot of really good feel stories, and we're reassuring and reaffirming a lot of things that we know. But you know what? There's this great quote from a good friend of mine that says that those closest to the problem are the closest to the solution, but furthest from the power and resources. And so as we're having these conversations about how important this is and how it makes us feel and how are we going to mobilize when we leave from here, we need to start connecting those dots for you, right? So that's what I'm going to try to do. And get you to think that while this is a starting point, we can all agree that we need to love one another. We also know that we need to mobilize those resources and that we need to hear your stories because you are the closest to the problem, so you are going to help us get as close to the solution. And I want you to also understand that somebody earlier mentioned we're all at the table. We're all at the table. Well, you know what they say. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? Y'all heard that? Yeah. So we're all at the table. And I wanna commend our chief for being here with us because you know what? It's not always an easy conversation. I get to do a lot of these, be the even person in the room type of scenarios. Man, and it's not easy, right? So I want to thank you for being here because just being present and listening, that's a first step, right? Building relationship and trust, that's a step. So, thank you. So today, with all the conversations, with all the great stories, with all the tear-jerking moments, with all the affirmations, right? We want you to purposely reach out and connect with folks in here and just get to know each other better. We're not going to tell you change the world overnight. We're not going to say you got to go out and solve homelessness, right? We want you to build relationships because together, collectively, right? And you've heard that a couple of times already, is how things are going to happen. Education is an important vehicle in all this. And I know the time thing came up real quick. Forgive me, y'all. Give me one more minute here. Over 2 million people are currently locked up in the United States. Over 70 million people are impacted by the criminal justice system, right? So all of us directly or indirectly know somebody that's been struggling with this system. I failed to mention earlier that I too became a product of all these things that happen in these communities with these individuals that deal with these challenges that are normal for us. And because of that, I grew up going at juvenile hall and then graduating to county jail and then even more because I was so good at what I did, but so bad that I got caught. ended up going to state, right? So I spent most of my 20s in state prison, right? And then I got out and I realized that I needed to treat myself better. That's the summary, right? That's the very short version. What I didn't mention is the homelessness, the feelings of inadequacy, the despair, the disappointment I caused as a son, as a dad, the lack of a dad, the lack of support. I didn't mention all that, but all that's in there too. So think about it. When these individuals come back home, and these are all your brothers and sisters, your moms, your cousins, your tias, your in-laws, whatever it is, right? When they come home, because they're going to come home, most of them, how are we creating an opportunity for them to be productive members of society? Are we going to do nothing and wait for them to recidivate? That's not the easiest word to say. To recidivate so they can continue to steal? Or are we going to steal from them the opportunity for them to change their lives? The opportunity to be a present father, like I get to be to my little ones today. The opportunity for them to be the experts in helping to address a lot of these issues that we're talking about. And think about it intentionally, right? Remember, we're not solving all the problems today, but I want you to be very comfortable being uncomfortable. And they stole my line. That's usually my line, so I'm glad that you used it, Tony. Because I tell folks this all the time. Mental health is no different than physical health. In that, if you think about physically, you put in, I usually work with kids, so pardon the analogy, we eat hot Cheetos and chamoy and all these different things that we consume, and they give us tummy aches, or they give us one of these things, right? We eat all these things and they start to have an effect on us physically, right? And so in return for that, in order to challenge that, we need to watch what we eat, exercise regularly, be mindful of all these things. If you think about it mentally, how many times don't we have to deal with things throughout the day? Do we consume toxic stuff, poison, feelings that I'm not enough, getting angry at somebody, being disappointed, being disappointing, right? And then what do we do with that? How do we counter that? So we need to have just as much urgency as we do for physical health, for the mental health piece of things. Thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of the talk.
Okay, so I'm Beatriz Villarreal, the famous Doctora Villarreal. That's what they call me in the Latino community. I'm from Mexico City. I'm not from Oceanside. But I've been in United States for more than 39 years. I came to study. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to come to the United States to do my master's degree in special education and my doctoral degree in educational leadership with emphasis in counseling for marriage, family, and children. When I was finished off I give you this story because I want you to understand where I'm coming from. I was the first Mexican woman to receive a doctoral degree from the University of San Diego. And thank you. And I say that because I'm very proud, and I want more Latina and Latino kids to do what I did. When you're a foreign student in the United States, they give you 2 years to work, to have the experience when you came to the United States. So one of my professors asked me to help him in an experiment only for 6 months to work and open a counseling program in juvenile hall. I never had an idea about delinquency or juvenile delinquency, and I said, oh, sure, I'm a special ed teacher, it's easy. So I didn't know what I was going to get into. The first week, I remember my husband, I said, you okay? Because you look like pale. Are you okay? It was really hard to see kids from 9 years old to 17 years old. Those days, juvenile hall was packed. We have like 750 kids. It was full. Right now it's like 50 kids inside. I'm sorry. But it was like, right now it's Before they arrest you by using drugs or by running away, they put you in juvenile hall. Right now, they send you to services, and well, sometimes it's okay and sometimes it's not okay, but they never ask me. So in those days, when I started the program, the counseling program that is called Spectrum Program, it was very famous, and we started doing support groups and individual counseling and working also with the families. After 6 months, the program was so successful that they give the contract to this agency, and just to make the story short, I end up being the director of the counseling program for 8 years in juvenile hall. So that's when I met the best teachers I ever had in my life. Best than all my professors, best than everything. Why? They were the kids inside juvenile hall. They were the ones who taught me about juvenile delinquency, gangs, drugs and alcohol. I didn't know about anything about marijuana, and how to make a joint, and how to do the crystal, and how to make primos. And I said, what is that? So I got the best teachers ever. And also, why you get into a gang? What is like to be in a gang? What is about the bautizan or jumping in? So they're the ones who give me that expertise. Why did I resign? Because after 8 years, 75% of the kids in juvenile hall were Latino. I said, what am I doing here? I want to change this. We're filling up jails and emptying up schools. So I decided to resign and start my own nonprofit that is called Mano a Mano Foundation. So what I do, it's a curriculum for parents. I work with families all over San Diego County, in more than 40 school districts all over. And I have this program that is called Parents Learning to Be Better Parents. Now it's calling Families Learning to Be Better Families, because the parents come with their kids and they make them sit and listen to la doctora. Okay, so they come with them and they have to listen to me. So I talk about things that to give them the tools to help the kids not only succeed in school, but succeed in life in general. So it's very popular. I grow the materials. It is made by me, 100%, and it's very successful. Every time that I do workshops in schools, we have 120 families, sometimes 200. I just graduated 300 families in San Marcos and San Mark's Church, and they ask me, what do you give them? Why they come every week? Because it's for 8 weeks, okay? And they have to receive they graduate from my program, that they receive a certificate. And that certificate is very powerful. Why? Because that's gonna help you if you are doing your immigration papers and you come to the judge and say, I graduated 8 times from La Doctora Villarreal's program. And that will help you, because that means that you're a leader in your kids' education. So they love the diplomas. And so it's, what do they give them? Why they come? So one of the things that I do, and I know there's a lot of people here who know me, and I work with Chanel Bello. That's one of my main persons that I work with. I bring the resources to the schools. I bring the resources to the people, and I don't have a secretary. I don't have an assistant. I work from home, but every single person who knows me has my phone number, my personal phone number. Say, you crazy? No, I'm not. Why? Because if they need help, I want to answer the phone. And I want to give them a name. And I've been doing that for 20 years. So that's why they follow me. That's why they're there. That's why they're sitting there in front of, in the first row and listen to La Doctora. Why? Because they trust me. And that's very hard to do. And if I'm in a committee, if I'm in a meeting, I'm trying to always do something, not just talk about it, just do something about it. Right now, we have a huge problem with fentanyl. Huge problem. Kids are dying every day. So what I'm doing right now is doing a lot of conferences all over San Diego. On Friday, I have one. If you want to go, if you speak Spanish, you're welcome to come. In Chula Vista, we already have 500 families registered. It's free. It's for everybody. It's for the whole family. I'm working a lot with the police. I love to work with the police. I want the Caltino families to see me working with the police, because there's a lot of separation right there. And if you have a problem with domestic violence, you want them to call right there. And no, they call La Doctora. Doctora, this is the second floor, somebody's, say, call the police. Oh, no, you call them. Say, no, you have to call them. So I empower them to call. I empower them to, I bring the police and the community together. And I think that's, thank you for being here, because I know he said that, but I have to say it again. It's very important, to have that presence. And from the chief, he didn't send his assistant or whatever, he's here. That's huge. That's huge. Really, really, it's amazing. I'm working with finally I started working with San Diego District Attorney's Office. I don't know if you know this, and probably there's some people here. They're amazing. They have the most amazing resources ever. And they come to my workshops, they bring the resources to the families. They say, okay, call me if you have a domestic violence issue, or if you don't know if it's a domestic violence or not. And in Spanish. That's incredible. That's amazing. For me, it's like finding a golden mine that I've been using a lot. So all the things that I do are in Spanish. Why? Because there's a lot of things who are in English. We offer translation. It's not the same. I'm sorry, but it's not the same. So you should do something like fentanyl in English. I say, why? There's already a lot of them in English. We need to do this in Spanish so we can connect with the families and they understand, because you're losing them in the translation, right? So that's why I'm doing it in Spanish. Many people don't like that, but sorry. Sorry. But my foundation, if you look into my webpage, manoamanofoundation.org or doctoravillarreal.com, you're going to see the pictures of the families and all the things that I've done in the community. I'm very, very involved with the community. I'm there from San Isidro to Valley Center. I work all over. And they know me, they call me every day from Monday to Sunday. And if I'm busy or if I'm with my granddaughters, I text them, I say, give me 10 minutes and I will call you back. I don't do appointments, and they know that. But if they call me and say, okay, can you refer me to an immigration lawyer? For example, I have a lady who is doing her paperwork for immigration. So they go into Google to see, okay, immigration lawyers. And they, okay, this looks really cute. Okay, I'm gonna hire him. So they call, unfortunately, and they charge $10,000, and they say, okay, you know what, your case is really good. I think I can get your papers in 5 months. And they say, oh, really, 5 months? Okay, so they take the money from all over. They go and they, I don't know how to say empeñar. They plan everything, and they get the money, they pay the money to the lawyer, and then little by little, they will say, okay, can I call you back? I'm busy. They don't answer the phone. And then I say, your case is very hard. I think I'm gonna need another $5,000 because it's getting really hard, and that's what is happening. So I work with lawyers who help them for free. I work with lawyers who help them really, really they can trust. So if they call me and they need a lawyer, I have a name. I have a phone number, okay? And that's very important. I know a lot of agencies in the community who are really good, but when I send them and they call them and there's an answering machine who say, we will call you back. We will call you back. We will call you back. And they never call them back. So that's a system. That's a system that we need to change. And mainly for mental health. If you're talking about mental health, you have to talk about addiction. And that's something I really talk every day. And I think for my 7 workshops, addiction is I think is the most important one, because parents are totally ignorant about what's going on. So I go buy a lot of things right here in Oceanside, right here, very close. I have pipes, I have everything. They have a huge table where I bring, this is marijuana, this is liquid marijuana, this is crystal meth, this is what it is, and then I show them what it is, because they don't even know where they hide them. Okay, so I then show them where they hide them. And also I bring speakers like Chanel. She comes and stand up and talk to the families and talk to the kids and share her experience. She was a heroin addict for 14 years of her life. And that comes behind a lot of emotional problems, mental health issues that were not attended. And that's why she got into addiction. So I talk about mental health. I invited the Neurotics Anonymous that are right here across the street. They meet every Monday and Wednesday, right here in Oceanside. They're amazing. The best therapists that you can imagine. They're not therapists, but it's like a support group. And they're incredible. They go through the 12 steps And they welcome everybody. It's in Spanish. It's right here in Oceanside. Well, they have it all over the place. They have it from San Isidro to Valley Center. They have a lot of support groups. So anyhow, my job is to bring the resources to connect, to really give them what they need, and also try to update all my information so they can use that information right away. I'm going to be doing another fentanyl conference in October right here in San Marcos in One Safe Place. It's a brand new, beautiful place in San Marcos for domestic violence. So I'm going to be doing that. And just, keep in touch. You know me. If you want my phone number, just come to me and I will give it to you very nicely. So I want to thank you, Oscarin. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Send them love one more time. A little love and a little networking. Little love. Beautiful. And we have a processing piece while they go off stage. So next slide, we got a processing piece. What's resonating? What did they get you thinking about? Okay, so talk to the people around you, please. What's resonating for you?